Hi, this is Steph with Stampin' and Scrappin' with Steph, and welcome to my brand new channel. Tonight, I'm excited to share with you my first of what I hope to be many videos to come, sharing what I love to do, creating and crafting projects. I am a Stampin' Up! Independent demonstrator, and I have been for the past 6 years. So we all know that this year has been with many challenges for lots of people. And during those hard times, I've decided to work on stepping out of my comfort zone in my craft business. So I currently am on Facebook and Instagram as well, under the Stampin' and Scrappin' with Steph name. And I also participate in a monthly blog hop. So for one of the projects in this blog hop, I decided to create a paper mug. Now, I will not take any credit for the design of a paper mug. It's been out for many, many years. And if you do a search on the internet, you will find so many different demonstrators and paper crafters showing you their paper mugs and directions and videos and how to make it. But this is my version. This is what I found to work for a project that I was making. And so I decided tonight to share this project with you. I hope you like it. Alright, so to start off with this project, this paper mug, I am using a suite from Stampin' Up! Called the Heartwarming Hugs. And this suite, it can be found in our current holiday mini catalog on pages 8 through, I believe, 11. There's lots of products within this suite. There's 2 stamp sets, some dies, a coffee carrier, paper mugs, ribbon and linen thread, but I really like the paper. It's very pretty and it definitely has those holiday colors. So this is my original one, and I used this really fun Mossy Meadow diagonal striped ribbon, and then I stamped and layered my tag here on the front. And this is done from the Warm Hugs stamp set, which is included in that suite. There's also some coordinating dies that allows you to cut out many of the pieces shown here. This was another one that I had created, and rather than using the ribbon, I used the thread that is in that suite as well. I added some fun hand cream and a little lip balm, and it's perfect to give as a gift. Okay, so to get started, you will need a piece of paper that measures 4.5 by 9. And if you're using a double-sided sheet of paper like I am, you'll need to decide what side is going to be the inside of your mug and what side you would like to be on the outside. So for this particular one, I decided this is going to be my outside. And the reason that I'm bringing that up is it's important when you begin scoring it. So I'm going to take out my Simply Scored scoring tool. You could also use the Stampin' Up! Trimmer that has a little score tool on there. But I find marking these to the appropriate measurements helps when I'm creating multiple projects. So we're starting with a 9-inch side at the top. I'm using, like I said, this is going to be the inside of my card. One thing you do want to keep in mind, if you're creating, if you're using a piece of designer series paper that has a pattern going in a particular direction, you want to make sure that before you do the bottom, and I'll explain that again, but you want to make sure you have the right side going in the right direction. So first we're going to start with, we're going to score every inch. So we're going to start at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. And then we're going to just do a quarter turn. So the 4.5-inch side is at top. And this is where I was referring to the direction of the paper. So we're going to add a score line going down at 1.5. This is going to be the bottom section of the box. This is the top, mug, and this is the top section. So when you do look at the paper from this point of view, you would want to make sure your pattern is facing in the right direction. Because once you assemble the mug, here's your score line, this is your bottom, If you don't put it in the right direction, this would be upside down. So I hope that makes sense. Let's see. Okay, so we're going to score it 1.5. And then we're going to move the scoreboard out of the way. Now it is a little tricky to see my score lines. Okay, and you should have score lines going all the way down the edge. So the first thing I'm going to do is cut out the section that we don't need. And it really doesn't matter what side you do it on because it assembles the same way. But I'm going to keep my tab, I'm going to create a tab on the right hand side. So I'm still sticking with this part is my inside, and this the last score line here, which would have been my 8-inch mark or 1 inch. And I'm just going to cut up to that 1.5 inch score line. And then I'm going to just fold that right there and cut this out. Add a little notch or a little kind of like a miter cut, I guess you could call it. And that just helps the tab for closure. Hopefully that makes sense. Okay, so now you have a little tab here and then your bottom. Okay, so I do apologize. I know it's hard to see, and unfortunately my lighting isn't the best. So now what I'm going to do is use my tear and tape, and from this very first score line here, I'm going to add my score tape, or excuse me, tear and tape, all the way down. You could use a liquid glue if you prefer, and if you were going to do that, I would suggest cutting your score lines before you add your glue. So now I'm going to cut up on all of my score lines, and I'm just turning it over because it's easier to see the score lines from this pattern. And you might be wondering why I haven't folded on my score lines, and one of the reasons in the many trials that I have done with this project is I prefer those score lines to be subtle. I like the mug having more of a rounded shape than having angles, if that makes sense. When I think of a mug, I think of a rounded surface. So now I just cut up on those score lines, and you can see what I mean. Like the mug itself has a rounded look, even though there's score lines every 1 inch. Okay, and so the point of not adding any tear tape here is this is going to be my first tab that kind of goes down when I start assembling it. So if I put adhesive on this side, there's nothing for it to attach to it. I do add a little piece of Designer Series paper to the inside of the card, so I guess, I mean, I could still have adhesive there, but I just omitted it. I didn't think it was necessary. Okay, and I'm going to turn this over, and I'm going to add the adhesive to this tab, and I'm going to do 2 strips. Now, this is where you certainly could use more of a liquid glue, but for the sake of the time on the video, I'm just going to stick with the tear tape, and I'm going to run a piece along the score line, and then to the end of the tab here. I find if you double it up like that, it helps to keep that tab in. Now, because the tab is a little bit on the wider side, it's an inch wide, you could trim the paper slightly to 8.5, but I found that I like the wider tab. So now I'm just going to stick this together right down the edge here. And hopefully everything's still in view. Okay. All right. So now here's the bottom of the cup or the mug. And you'll see I have this one tab here that doesn't have anything on it, and then the opposite side. So you could remove all of the backings to your tear and tapes at once, or you could do it tab by tab as you stick it together. I'm just going to rip it all off because to me it doesn't really affect the way that I close this up. So where are we? Okay, so here's the one that doesn't have anything on it. And I'm going to fold it down and then bring over the opposite side. Now, I'm not pulling it in, you know, tightly because I don't want to distort the mug itself. If you pull the tabs in too tightly, it kind of warps the sides a little bit, and I don't want to do that. And then I'm just going to continue one across from the other, and gently attaching them until it's all done. Okay, and then I'm going to turn it over and take my bone folder and just press down to make sure it's all secure. Okay, and so now you have like a little bit of like a cylinder look. Okay, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take another piece of the same designer series paper. You could use a cardstock or a chipboard, but I'm going to work on my handle. And for this particular one, I used the same pattern, except I used the gingham side, which is the inside of the mug. So I'm going to do a layered circle. You can use dies or ovals as well, whatever you prefer to make the handle with. I'm just going to use my circle punches. Layering dies, like layering circle dies, work just as well, like I mentioned, but for the sake of time, not necessarily the sake of time, but for like to make the project a little bit easier, I just found the punches move a little bit faster. So to do like that layered ring, or to create a ring, start with this smallest size first. So this is a 1.5 inch punch, and then I'm going to punch. I'm going to do this twice, and then I'm going to take the 2-inch circle punch, and I'm going to go over and center it best I can, and then I'm going to punch, and then you get that ring. Now I'm going to do the same thing with this one. And then I'm going to punch out 2 more 2-inch circles. Okay, and I'm going to start with the 2-inch circles first. Actually, no, I'm going to start with my rings first. So to do my handles, I use the gingham side. So I'm going to add the liquid Tombow multi-purpose glue, because I want to make sure this stays together well, especially where it's a handle. So I'm going to add my liquid glue around, place this one on top of the other, and then I'm just going to set it aside to dry for a minute. And then I'm going to take the 2 circles and I'm going to add liquid glue to the gingham side of one, and then to this diamond print on the other. You could use your tear and tape or whatever adhesive you prefer that has a nice strong bond. The reason I decided to do this is, to me, it gives it a little bit more of a finished look. If somebody was to really look at, you know, the mug itself, you can see it has, you know, the seams from where you brought the tabs in. So I liked adding the little circle because I felt it just kind of gave it that finished look. Okay, and then on the inside I did the gingham side up and just place it inside. Take your bone folder and just give it a good push down till it sets. And then if you put something slightly heavy in here, you've added another layer of support to those tabs. Okay, so let's do the handle. So here's the handle. I'm going to cut it probably about 3/4, not 3/4 of the way, not really a half of the circle. So you have one side that's a little bit bigger than the other, and that's the side that you want. I'm going to just fold down the edges slightly, and so you have a little bent notch there. And then I'm going to take the liquid glue again and add just a little bit of glue on those notches. using that seam where we attach the sides. That's my guide. So I'm just lining up the edge of those tabs right there with that seam. And when it bonds, I just give it a little press down. Okay. There we go. And I'm just going to give it a minute to set, and then I'll reshape it a little bit. Okay. So the next thing that you want to do is your embellishment, your front decoration. So in this particular one, I used cherry cobbler in the back, some mossy meadow, the greeting, and then the little heart. And that all comes from that stamp set. For this one, I'm going to do it a little bit differently. I'm going to work off my original. So I'm going to use the glimmer paper, and then I'm going to do the same layers. Okay, so I'm going to cut a piece of glimmer paper and punch it out with the 2-inch circle punch. And then I have already stamped my other layers here. So for this one, I used the color Mossy Meadow. This is the stamp that I used. And then I used the coordinating die to cut that shape out. On this particular one, I used the color Pear Pizzazz for my ink on Whisper White. This is the stamp right here. And then I cut that one out with the coordinating die, which is really cool because it automatically cuts the middle out for you. And then lastly is the little heart. So that's stamped in real red. And again, that's from the same stamp set here. And there's a little heart die that will cut it out. Okay, so I'm going to add mini dimensionals around this one. Oop. And put this right on top. And I'm going to add a little dimensional to the back of my heart. And then put this right here. Okay. And then because we're using glimmer paper, you want to make sure that you use a stronger adhesive. Sometimes using just a regular Stampin' Sale or tape runner isn't strong enough because of the glitter. So I'm just going to add some dimensionals here. It's what I've used for a while. I've never really had an issue where they fall off because of the glitter. Liquid glue is perfectly fine. It just takes a little bit longer to set. And add that right there. Okay. So before I add this onto my mug, I am going to add some ribbon. What ribbon do I want to use? I think I'm going to use this one right here. Oops. So this is the Stampin' Up! Metallic Mesh ribbon, and it's just such a fun, pretty ribbon. It came with the Magic in This Night suite. I don't know if you can really see the detail to it. So I'm just going to wrap this around through the handle. And I'm not really measuring out, I'm just doing enough so that I can tie a bow. And I'm not really pulling too tight as I wrap it around the mug because I don't want to squash it. I want to make sure it keeps that shape. Now you might be wondering too, you didn't see me go in and do anything with my score lines other than put it together. And you might be wondering, well, why didn't you just wrap a piece of paper? Why go through scoring that? Because I find when you score it, it gives some support to the shape you're looking for. And especially if you're using cardstock. Designer series paper is easier, I think, to manipulate when it comes to a project like this. But if you were using a piece of cardstock, you would definitely want these score lines. Okay, so pretty, that ribbon. All right, and the last thing that we need to do is just to adhere our greeting. And again, I'm going to do some dimensionals right on the back here. So I hope you liked my video. Feel free to give me a thumbs up, leave me a comment, and subscribe. I'm going to be working hard at trying to get some videos up there for you. Right now I'm currently doing some Facebook Lives to teach my Cards to Go class that I normally would hold in my house. But with everything going on, like many of you, we're just doing things remotely. So now you can fill this up with some fun candy or treats. I'm just adding the little lotion pack in here that I put together. And then here is the project we just made tonight. And here's my original one. I hope you enjoyed the project I've shared with you. And I look forward to sharing again. Thanks so much. Have a great night.